Let's go to trade. Trade with China, trade with different countries. What is your view on trade? How different would your trade philosophies be than what we have today?
My trade philosophy is that people have the right to trade their goods and services with other people, regardless of where they are. And that when you throw tariffs in there, that's basically a hidden tax, and people pay more. Let's go to Bangladesh. That makes a lot of clothes. If we put tariffs, now poor people in this country have to pay more for their clothes. And what we have is we have a government that puts all these regulations in place to increase prices, and then the government says, oh, well, I guess we have to hand out welfare. Well, maybe if they got rid of some of these regulations, we would have cheaper goods and services, and people would be able to buy things at a reasonable or cheap cost.
So how would your relationship with China be today? Well, how different would you treat China?
I hope I would have a very good relationship with China, as with other countries.
What does that mean? I mean, that's a...
Well, that means, the example that I like to give is Japan, which is, 1941, World War II, horrible. They bombed us. And I point out, we buy so many Hondas and Toyotas now. They're not going to bomb us now because you tend to not bomb your best customer. So when goods cross borders, soldiers don't have to. So if you have a good trading partner, then why would why would there be a problem? Because you can help each other.
Who do you see right now as enemy to state number one? Like in America today. So you become president tomorrow. Who is some countries that you'd be very careful doing business with because their motives may not align with our motives?
Well, but you have to look at the leaders versus the people. So, for instance, Saudi Arabia, years ago, President Bush was like, oh, Saudi, they're our friends. Well, yeah, Bush was friends with the king and the aristocratic people in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the other people are getting ready for 9/11. So if we can trade freely and people see that it's an advantage and that they're being helped by us, then we would have a better relationship. But again, it's not a matter of this ruler versus this ruler. It's people freely trading goods. And which kind of goes to, we talk about foreign aid. Oh.
But that's not how things are. You're saying people. So in order for your philosophy to exist, everybody in the world would need to believe in what you believe in. It's not going to happen. You're saying for people to trade freely with each other?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter to me. It would be nice if China could freely trade with Switzerland, but, that's their business. All I'm worried about is Americans being able to trade with other people. But in that case,
if we're freely trading with China, but anything... they can export anything they want here without any trades or tariffs. But the stuff we export there, would we then also have to not have a tariff on that end? Or could they do whatever they want in that case?
When they end up doing that, we end up with more money in our pockets. If they want to punish their people, there's nothing we can do about that. What I want to do is not punish our people. I want our people to be able to get the best prices they can.
I think that's naive.
Is it? I think in one thing there, it's more short term versus long term. Is it a good thing in the short term, but something that could hurt in the long term?
How would it hurt people in the long term?
I think if you have export of goods and we're now decreasing, so you're flooding the market with international products, which is good for the consumer. It's cheap, but in the long term, that consumer needs a job, and if we're exporting that and you don't have tariffs or a way to protect that, what are we doing to protect the workers in our country then?
Well, politicians, let me give you an example. And if you don't mind, I need to get a
Please,
drink here.
do that. Yeah, please. Can you do me a favor and pull up...
I'm sorry.
Go for it. I'll text you. Go ahead.
So politicians talk about unforeseen consequences, and that's so frustrating because, like San Francisco saying we're going to prosecute only $900 or $950 whatever dollars and above. Oh, we didn't see this coming. I mean, no, you should have seen it coming. So let's take cars. Mm-hmm. We protected Detroit. And what the government did was they said, don't worry, we'll prop you up. We'll make sure that, people pay tariffs. And so they got lazy. And if you look at what the unions were doing, which was just so frustrating, the unions would say, oh, well, you hired us to put one screw in over there, not, 3 screws over here. So we're not going to do it. And so car companies were unable to innovate. And so now you're still going to the dealership. Well, I want the power windows, but not the power door locks. And meanwhile, Japan over there, which is really competing, they're the ones saying, oh, guess what? We're going to give you all that free. So basically, we're propping up an industry and hindering it because we're protecting it from free market forces. And if the government had not protected them, then maybe they would have been more competitive, and it would be like, okay, union, we don't care what you say. You're putting 3 screws over there, or we're going to go get somebody else, because we've got to be able to compete with Japan. And I teach in my social psychology class that competition is good, and that's one of the reasons, and there's a trade-off, but I won't go into the academic stuff, but the reason that we're walking around with such awesome phones like yours right there is basically Bill Gates and Steve Jobs hated each other, and they wanted to outdo each other, and each one came up, well, I'm going to do this, and then the next one, I'm going to do that, and they were fiercely competitive, and we're the ones who won out. And part of the reason that technology was able to move as fast as it did is that the government couldn't keep up and regulate it at every level. When it comes to cars, that's for like 80s, 90s kind of low technology. You've got CAFE standards, mileage. Biden just put in other mileages. So we've got the government hindering competition by throwing all these things at them. Computers were going so fast they couldn't even keep up.
So I think that's a good example of, you're saying that the government is hindering. But if the government is hindering, how then would not tariffs also just ruin it even more? Because I think you can either go away with all of it and have it more competitive and kind of go about that route, or you can't just take away certain things. If you take away tariffs without taking away unions in that end, which is the opposite end of it, right? Of either they have full control or they have no control. So then at that point, you're just hindering more and just crushing it more.
Oh, trust me, under a Jorgensen administration, the unions would not have the power that they have. Now, do I think that people should be able to freely and collectively get together and bargain? Absolutely. What I'm completely against is the special rules that unions get, to where basically unions can hold companies hostage. Yeah. So if you want to get together and you unionize and you say, we're going to demand this, and the company says, nah, we're going to hire another 1,000 people, goodbye. Okay. Free. In other words, free market union bargaining.
Yeah.
But let's go back to that in regards to China. It's very important to stay on China. Let's stay on China. So
why?
Because it's the country that wants to take over U.S. What do you mean why? You can't say why. As a candidate, it's what most Americans fear, the power and the motive that China has. They get up and talk about America, that they want to crush the skull of anybody that gets in the way, and that's their foreign minister saying that, and you're saying why. But let me stay on this. Let me ask my question. Let me ask my question, and then I'll turn it over to you. So if I'm a voter, whether I'm on the left or the right, I fear certain countries, okay? And if I'm probably going to fear a little bit of Iran. I'm going to fear a little bit of Russia, probably a lot more today. I'm going to fear China. And then there's a few other countries that I would fear, right? Okay. To say, yeah, it's just give them trade. I mean, it's okay. Let them do trades with us. And as long as they're sending us the product, that's great. Well, what eventually happens is you eventually rely on that country where 80% of the chips are being made there, and the value of cars goes to the roof. And you got China's COVID cases are record-breaking as of today. Those are China's COVID cases. John, if you can show that on the screen. And if these guys get COVID cases, I don't know if you've seen what China just did. The entire nation's been shut down. So they're not working now. So I can't get chips out now. So now I have to delay the value of used cars are about to go up another 10%, 20%. China doesn't give a shit about America. China doesn't wake up in the morning saying, well, Joe Jorgensen, your libertarian philosophies are so sweet. We're going to follow it as well. And here's what we're going to follow. They don't care about us. And because of all these relations we've had with them over the last 40 years, we have made a country that was not in the top 10 of GDP. Now number 2 is about to pass up U.S. And they're now realizing the world revolves around us. U.S. owes them $1.1 trillion of debt, and they got to make those payments to them. If we're not, it's naive to say that. What I do think where libertarian would have worked is if a country's being founded. So your philosophies work. If you go start your own country from the beginning, then I would move to it. But it is so hard to change the infrastructure of a country like this to say, well, let's do this, well, let's do that. But that also means the way we've trained all these other powerhouse countries in the world that we've empowered, they also have to change. Yeah. We're naive if we think they're going to change. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, there are about 4 or 5 questions packed in there. I would still point out, you said that China doesn't care about us. Japan cares about us now.
These are 2 different countries.
I know, but
you keep saying Japan. Japan's not China.
I know, but my point is that Japan bombed us earlier. They wouldn't bomb us now because we're buying a lot. You know, what would they do without us buying all their Toyotas and Hondas? It's in their best interest. As I said, when goods cross borders, soldiers tend not to. But you talked about chips. Part of the reason that we've got so many chips made in China is because of the tax structure, because of the unions, because of all the problems we've got in the U.S., that if we could have more of a free market here, then we would have more chips made here. So again, I like to sometimes quote my running mate in 1996, Harry Brown. He said, what the government does is they break your leg and then they expect you to be grateful when they hand you crutches. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we've got so many taxes that manufacturing has moved off base. In fact, notice Trump lowered that and some people started coming back. So, you know, what if we put that at 0? Do you think maybe there'd be chips made here? So, yeah, that's why we're relying on China for that.
Oh, my God. If you go with the approach of just being passive with China, they will use and abuse you in capital. They will say, I'm so glad a Dr. Joe Jorgensen is president because she is so sweet. Let's take advantage of America. It's going to be so awesome for us because look what Russia did. Here's the thing with Russia, right? How do you think Russia views Biden versus a Trump? Love, hate, whatever you want to call Trump or Biden. Russia or the world didn't do anything under Trump's administration, okay? You didn't have any Afghanistan issues. You had Palestine and Israel getting along, 25 years first time. You didn't have any of the stuff that was going on with Russia. Everybody was pretty chill, saying, you know what, maybe we don't need to do anything. Then all of a sudden a leader like Biden gets in, nice man, seems like a very nice man. I don't know his motives and all that other stuff, but when I look at him at face value, I'm like, okay, very nice. What happens? Boom, Taliban. Opportunity, boom, Russia. Opportunity, Ukraine, boom. Everybody's like, opportunity, opportunity. Look, I want to sit there and say these things make sense, but there are some real legitimate oppositions America has today that we have to know how to manage them, okay? Again, going back to this, Joe, today, China shut down. Today, most of our air conditionings comes from there. Most of the equipment we get from there.
Yeah, again, we should be making that here. But because of the tax structure, because of the unions, because of many other things, we're not. And how about we solve that problem so we can start bringing manufacturing back?
And this brings me back to why you ought to consider running for Congress or Senate instead of president. This brings me back to why don't you do a working from the bottom up.
Grassroots movement.
Yeah, grassroots movements. Mm-hmm. Let's get some more Senate. You're at the Bitcoin conference. Why don't you go inspire a ton of these guys to want to go be congressmen and congresswomen and mayors and governors and senators?
In fact, I just did that yesterday. Okay. I talked with somebody who said he was interested in libertarian. And the way he was talking, I asked him, well, have you considered running for office? Actually, I think I've asked 2 or 3 people that. But the guy I talked with yesterday said, I have been thinking about that, maybe mayor. And I said, you should do that. So, and we do need more libertarians at the state and local levels. And our campaign, one of our goals of our campaign was to help people running for state and local. So, for instance, probably more so than any other presidential campaign, what we would do is we would take the data real time, give it to people who were running for state and local offices. And because in the past, many, many different campaigns have promised to give the information, and they would get them to them like a year later after the election, or not get it to them at all. But we were probably the best in Libertarian Party history for getting that information to those people so they would have data they could use so that they could try to win their offices. And we recently had a Libertarian voted into a state rep place. And we do have a couple of prominent libertarians at the local level. And I think that that is very important because so many people have never heard of libertarians, or we're the wild, crazy people with the horns, and they can see that we've got very good ideas that work. And the people who have run, the Jeff Hewitt, Jim Turney, they've been doing a great job, and people have started saying, you know what, this actually does work. How about we do cut taxes? How about we do let people make their choice? Now, you got to agree with cutting taxes, right? You can't.
That's not the point, though. Of course, I'm a capitalist. Of course, I agree with cutting taxes. But for me, it's the all-in package. It's not just one area of cutting taxes. I can even get in with the drugs part. Okay, fine. Let's just say if I go
well, the reason I said that is because when I said cutting taxes, you kind of sighed, and I thought, well, that's common ground we can agree on.
I'm of course I'm there, but here's what I'm thinking about. So consider me from the angle I'm processing. I can't run for office. I'm not born here. If I was born here, I'd have a different conversation, but I can't. So I can't create that kind of change, right, myself. But I'm talking more from your standpoint of where you are. Why isn't this message that is somewhat a common sense, not trait, not a few of the parts. I have a hard time with some of the parts of it, because you can never underestimate the power of an enemy that wants to take you down. Never. If you do that, you are so naive, you don't belong in office. You can never underestimate that. And quite frankly, I don't want to have a leader that will underestimate the enemy, because they'll scare the crap out of me for 4 years, and I want that person out of office as quickly as possible. I don't want that. But I want to go to another thing.
Well, can I just say something really quickly? And then... And the reason I was saying, can we move on? Because maybe this is an agree to disagree, and there are so many other topics I'd love to cover.
If you enjoyed this short clip, click over here to watch another short clip. And if you want to watch the entire episode, the entire podcast, click here.